Virtual desktops can be reserved through the Dispel console. Let's see how the process works. On the left, we have the administrator's computer. Our administrator, Fred, logs in with credentials and MFA. Because Fred is an administrator, the console will show all of the Dispel resources. Now, we look at the vendor's computer, whose account we have called POC Gamma. POC Gamma logs in and is instantly given a virtual desktop. The administrator shows in real time that a virtual desktop has been reserved. The administrator can see who reserved it and how long access will be provided. The administrator also has the ability to destroy the user's desktop early, if needed. Let's use the virtual desktop. The user just needs to input the presented information into an RDP client. In this case, we're using Microsoft Remote Desktop. We add the virtual desktop's IP address, copy its credentials, and enter them. Then we are presented with the virtual desktop. Note that for this video, our user desktop is light purple. Let's give our admin a desktop too. From the console, our admin reserves a desktop and can immediately see the credentials. Note that the admin can see everyone's desktops, but the users can only see their own desktops. Just like the user, the admin logs into their desktop with the provided credentials. They add the PC to their RDP client, then copy the login credentials for the virtual desktop. Note that for this video, our user desktop is light purple, and our admin desktop is dark purple. Let's try to connect to a network through Dispel. We want to make sure that nobody can have internet while connected to an OT network. Here's a sample network with icons for each possible connection drawn: internet connection, a factory PLC, an admin terminal, and a SCADA terminal. In this lab setup, the PLC and both terminals are protected with Dispel. Thus, if we can connect to the internet, then we will not be able to connect to any end device. Once we pass through Dispel, we can connect to end devices, but will lose internet. We can never connect to both at the same time, only one or the other. Let's see it in action. On the user's virtual desktop, let's open two command terminals. In one of them, let's ping the New York Times. It works! In the other, let's ping the factory PLC. The connection times out. Now let's open Dispel. Enter our credentials and connect. We go back to ping the same places and see that the New York Times can't be found anymore, meaning that we have no more internet. The internal PLC, however, is now pingable. Now, let's look at whitelisting. By default, when connected to Dispel, the whitelist contains nothing. We want our user to be able to do two things. 1. Ping the factory PLC, and 2. RDP to the SCADA terminal. Since these are the only two functions whitelisted for this user, our users should not be able to access the factory PLC in other ways, like SSH or RDPing to the admin terminal. We whitelist these for the user. Let's see it in action. Here, since we are connected to Dispel, we see that we lose internet. And are able to ping the factory PLC. Now, let's try to SSH to the PLC. This should not work because SSH was not whitelisted for our user. After a second, we see that it times out and permission is not granted. Now, let's check the whitelist for RDP. First, we try to RDP to the admin terminal. And see that it does not work. Next, we RDP to the SCADA terminal. And are able to log in. This takes us up to our SCADA workstation, where users can interact with network endpoints just like they are physically on the LAN. When finished, users can disconnect. Now let's look at the admin's desktop. For the admin, we want to enable everything. Ping and SSH to the factory PLC, and RDP to both the admin terminal and the SCADA terminal. Let's see it in action. Just like before, the admin enters their credentials into the Dispel application and connects to the network. Let's try to ping and SSH to the PLC. We see that the ping works, and so does the SSH. Now, let's try to access the admin and SCADA terminals by RDP. We see that both of these work. However, once we disconnect from Dispel, we can no longer see any of the assets. Here you can see the RDP connection trying to be made while disconnected from Dispel. It doesn't work. And neither can we ping the PLC. Of course, once we connect again, it all works again. Let's look at real-time screen recording. First, the user logs in through the Dispel console. Now let's look at what's happening on the admin side. In a browser, the admin can select the session to view, in this case, the most recent. The admin can see every session, including the start date and time, end date and time, which desktop it is on, which computer it came from, and what protocol was used. Let's play the session that we just did. Maybe they opened Dispel to try to connect. Type in their credentials, connect, and RDP to the SCADA terminal. The terminal takes a second to open, and once they are on the terminal, they test the alarm, check the equipment, and acknowledge the message. Then they close the RDP and disconnect from Dispel. Let's talk about Dispel's remote desktop control. When a user needs help, they can log into Dispel and open the remote control app. On the other side, the person assisting can enter through a web browser. However, this remote control room can only be entered once connected through Dispel. Here, you can see that the connection did not work. But once we connect to Dispel and refresh the page, we can enter the room. Once they are both in the room, access can be requested and granted. Once access is granted, the controller is able to open, close, and type into the controllee's desktop. Here, we see the controller help open an RDP connection. Note that this is only possible when both people are connected through Dispel. Once done, the desktop control is revoked.